There's something Carl Jung discovered about the human psyche that most people will never understand, and it might just save your life. According to Jung, when a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you, they don't just walk away. No, what happens next is far more sinister than you could ever imagine. But before I reveal this devastating final tactic that Jung warned us about, you need to understand something crucial about the narcissistic mind that even trained therapists often miss. Carl Jung said that within every human being exists what he called the shadow, the dark, repressed aspects of our personality that we refuse to acknowledge. According to Jung's groundbreaking research, narcissists have a particularly dangerous relationship with their shadow self. What Jung discovered about narcissistic behavior will change everything you thought you knew about manipulation, but here's what's truly terrifying. Most people don't realize they're dealing with a narcissist until it's too late. Jung explained that narcissists project their shadow onto others, meaning they see their own darkness reflected in the people around them. But when they encounter someone who can see through their facade, someone who becomes too dangerous to manipulate, something extraordinary happens in their psychological makeup. And this is where Jung's most chilling observation comes into play. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal could protect you from psychological devastation. According to Carl Jung, we all wear what he called a persona, a mask we present to the world. For most people, this persona is simply a social adaptation. But Carl Jung discovered that for narcissists, the persona isn't just a mask, it's their entire identity. But here's what Jung found that shocked the psychological community. When a narcissist's persona is threatened by someone who sees their true nature, they don't just defend it, they declare war. Jung observed that narcissists have what he termed an inflated ego, a psychological state where they believe they are superior to others. This inflation serves as a defense mechanism against their deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and shame. But Carl Jung said something about narcissistic rage that most people don't know, and understanding this could be the difference between freedom and psychological imprisonment. When you become too dangerous to manipulate, you're essentially threatening the narcissist's entire psychological structure. Jung called this a psychological crisis that triggers their most primitive defense mechanisms. Carl Jung discovered that narcissists go through 3 distinct stages when they encounter someone they can no longer control. Stage 1, the testing phase. According to Jung's observations, narcissists first attempt to probe your psychological boundaries. They're looking for what Jung called psychological weak points, areas where they can insert their manipulation. But here's what Carl Jung noticed that will make your blood run cold. If you successfully resist their initial manipulation attempts, you've just marked yourself as a threat. Jung explained that during this phase, narcissists are conducting what he termed psychological reconnaissance. They're studying your reactions, your triggers, and your defense mechanisms. And what Jung discovered about their next move will leave you speechless. Stage 2, the escalation phase. Carl Jung said that when narcissists realize their usual tactics aren't working, they enter what he called compensatory behavior. They overcompensate for their lack of control by becoming more aggressive in their manipulation attempts. According to Jung's research, this is where narcissists begin to employ what he termed psychological warfare. They may use gaslighting, projection, and emotional manipulation with increased intensity. But Carl Jung discovered something terrifying about this phase. It's actually a test to see if you'll break under pressure. And if you don't. Jung observed that narcissists in this stage often recruit what he called flying monkeys, other people who unknowingly assist in their manipulation campaign. This is a sophisticated psychological strategy that Jung found particularly insidious. Because what happens in the 3rd stage is something that Carl Jung said could destroy even the strongest minds. Stage 3, the recognition phase. This is where Jung's most important discovery comes into play. According to Carl Jung, when a narcissist finally realizes that you are completely immune to their manipulation, they experience what he called narcissistic mortification. A psychological wound so deep that it threatens their entire sense of self. And this is when they deploy the one last dirty trick that Carl Jung warned could be more devastating than any previous manipulation. Carl Jung discovered that when narcissists can no longer control you through direct manipulation, they attempt something he called psychological inversion. They try to make you question your own sanity and perception of reality. According to Jung's research, this final tactic involves the narcissist positioning themselves as the victim while painting you as the aggressor. Jung called this shadow projection on steroids. But here's what makes this tactic so dangerous, according to Carl Jung. Jung explained that this inversion technique exploits what he called the collective unconscious, shared psychological patterns that exist in all humans. The narcissist taps into society's natural tendency to sympathize with apparent victims. Carl Jung said this about narcissistic inversion that will shock you: it's not just manipulation, it's psychological terrorism designed to isolate you from your support system. According to Carl Jung, the smear campaign is the narcissist's attempt to control the narrative when they can no longer control you. Jung observed that narcissists have an uncanny ability to manipulate group psychology. Carl Jung discovered that narcissists instinctively understand what he called archetypal patterns, universal psychological themes that resonate with people on a deep, unconscious level. They position themselves as the archetypal victim and you as the archetypal villain. And Jung's research revealed something about this tactic that most people never realize until it's too late. Jung found that narcissists often begin their smear campaigns by sharing what appears to be legitimate concerns about your behavior. They present themselves as worried, confused, or hurt by your actions. But Carl Jung discovered the true purpose behind this apparent vulnerability: it's a calculated strategy to recruit allies for their psychological warfare. According to Jung's observations, narcissists are masterful at identifying people who are susceptible to manipulation. They target empathetic individuals who naturally want to help someone in distress. Carl Jung said that the ultimate goal of the narcissist's final manipulation tactic is isolation. According to Jung's research, narcissists understand that humans are social creatures who need connection and validation from others. But what Jung discovered about their isolation strategy will terrify you. Jung explained that narcissists systematically work to separate you from your support network by poisoning your relationships one by one. They plant seeds of doubt about your character in the minds of your friends, family, and colleagues. And Carl Jung found that they use a specific psychological technique that makes their lies seem believable. According to Jung's research, narcissists employ what he called truth sandwiching. They embed their lies between factual statements, making the entire narrative seem credible. Jung observed that this technique exploits the human brain's tendency to accept information that comes bundled with verifiable facts. The conscious mind struggles to separate the truth from the lies. Carl Jung discovered that when narcissists can no longer manipulate you directly, they project their own shadow characteristics onto you with unprecedented intensity. According to Jung's analysis, this projection serves multiple purposes. It allows the narcissist to disown their own negative traits while simultaneously attacking your character. But here's what Carl Jung said about this projection that will make everything click into place. Jung explained that narcissists unconsciously assign their own motivations, behaviors, and psychological patterns to you. If they're manipulative, they'll accuse you of manipulation. If they're abusive, they'll claim you're the abuser. And Carl Jung discovered why this projection is so effective. It exploits the psychological principle he called confirmation bias amplification. According to Jung's research, when people hear accusations that contain elements of psychological truth, even when those elements don't apply to you, their brains automatically begin searching for evidence to support the claims. Carl Jung said that the narcissist's final manipulation tactic involves a complete inversion of reality. According to Jung's observations, they systematically rewrite the narrative of your relationship to position themselves as the victim. But what makes this technique so devastatingly effective, according to Carl Jung, is something most people never anticipate. Jung discovered that narcissists have an intuitive understanding of what he called psychological timing. They know exactly when to deploy their inversion technique for maximum impact. And Carl Jung found that they specifically target moments when you're most vulnerable to psychological manipulation. According to Jung's research, narcissists often launch their final attack when you're dealing with stress, grief, or major life changes. They exploit your emotional vulnerability to make their false narrative seem more believable. Jung explained that during these vulnerable periods, your psychological defenses are weakened, making you more susceptible to self-doubt and confusion. Carl Jung discovered that when narcissists deploy their final manipulation tactic, they amplify their gaslighting techniques to unprecedented levels. According to Jung's observations, this isn't just casual gaslighting, it's systematic psychological assault. And what Jung found about this amplified gaslighting will explain every confusing moment you've experienced. Jung explained that narcissists begin questioning not just your perceptions, but your fundamental capacity for rational thought. They suggest that you're unstable, unreliable, or mentally unwell. But Carl Jung said something about this gaslighting technique that reveals its true purpose. According to Jung's research, the goal isn't just to make you doubt specific events, it's to make you doubt your entire sense of reality. Jung called this psychological reality erosion. Jung observed that narcissists systematically attack your confidence in your own memory, judgment, and perception. They want you to become so uncertain about your own mental state that you stop trusting yourself entirely. Carl Jung also discovered that narcissists understand and exploit what modern psychology calls social proof. The tendency for people to look to others for cues about how to think and behave. According to Jung's analysis, when narcissists can't manipulate you directly, they manipulate the people around you to create false social proof that supports their narrative. But here's what Carl Jung observed about this manipulation that will make your jaw drop. Jung found that narcissists specifically target people who are naturally empathetic and want to believe the best in others. They exploit these individuals' compassion and turn it into a weapon against you. And Carl Jung discovered why this manipulation is so effective. It exploits what he called the helper's psychology. According to Jung's research, people who are naturally inclined to help others often fail to recognize manipulation because their empathy overrides their critical thinking. Jung explained that narcissists instinctively identify these helper personalities and present themselves as someone in need of support and understanding. Carl Jung said that when narcissists deploy their final manipulation tactic, they engage in what he called systematic character destruction. According to Jung's observations, this goes far beyond simple gossip or complaints. What Jung discovered about their character assassination techniques will reveal why their attacks feel so devastating. Jung found that narcissists don't just attack your actions, they attack your fundamental character traits and motivations. They suggest that your positive qualities are actually negative traits in disguise. And Carl Jung observed something about this assassination campaign that explains why it's so psychologically damaging. According to Jung's research, narcissists systematically reframe your strengths as weaknesses. If you're independent, they'll call you selfish. If you're confident, they'll call you arrogant. If you set boundaries, they'll call you controlling. Jung explained that this reframing technique is particularly effective because it contains a grain of truth. Every positive trait can potentially become negative when taken to extremes. Carl Jung discovered that the narcissist's final manipulation tactic includes what he called emotional terrorism, the deliberate infliction of psychological pain designed to break your spirit. According to Jung's analysis, this isn't random cruelty, it's calculated psychological warfare designed to force you into submission. But what Carl Jung found about their emotional terrorism tactics will help you understand why you feel so devastated. Jung observed that narcissists specifically target your deepest insecurities and vulnerabilities. They weaponize the intimate knowledge they've gained about you during your relationship. And Carl Jung said something about this emotional terrorism that reveals its ultimate purpose. According to Jung's research, the goal of emotional terrorism isn't just to hurt you, it's to break your psychological resistance so completely that you'll do anything to make the pain stop, including accepting their version of reality. Jung explained that narcissists understand that humans have a breaking point, and they systematically apply pressure until they find yours. Carl Jung discovered several psychological principles that explain why the narcissist's final manipulation tactic is so devastatingly effective. According to Jung's research, this tactic exploits what he called cognitive overload, the brain's tendency to shut down when overwhelmed with conflicting information. But here's what makes this manipulation so insidious, according to Carl Jung. Jung found that when you're simultaneously dealing with false accusations, social isolation, gaslighting, and emotional terrorism, your brain simply can't process all the psychological attacks effectively. And Carl Jung observed something about this cognitive overload that explains why smart, strong people fall victim to narcissistic manipulation. According to Jung's analysis, intelligence and strength don't protect you from cognitive overload. In fact, Jung found that highly intelligent people often struggle more because they try to logically analyze illogical behavior. Jung explained that narcissistic manipulation operates below the level of rational thought, targeting what he called primitive psychological responses. Carl Jung said that when narcissists deploy their final manipulation tactic, they intensify what modern psychology calls trauma bonding, the psychological attachment that forms between abuser and victim. According to Jung's observations, this intensification serves a specific purpose: it makes you more likely to return to the narcissist to stop the psychological pain. And what Jung discovered about trauma bonding will explain every confusing emotion you felt. Jung found that the alternating pattern of extreme psychological pain followed by brief moments of relief creates a powerful addiction-like response in the brain. But Carl Jung said something about this bonding that reveals why it's so difficult to break free. According to Jung's research, trauma bonding exploits the human nervous system's natural response to threat and safety. Your brain becomes conditioned to see the narcissist as both the source of danger and the source of relief. Jung explained that this creates a psychological dependency that can persist even when you intellectually understand that the relationship is harmful. Carl Jung discovered that narcissists create what he called false urgency as part of their final manipulation tactic. According to Jung's analysis, they manufacture crises that demand immediate response and prevent you from thinking clearly. But here's what Carl Jung observed about this false urgency that will change everything. Jung found that narcissists deliberately create chaos and confusion to keep you in a reactive state rather than a thoughtful, strategic state. And Carl Jung said something about this chaos creation that reveals its true purpose. According to Jung's research, when you're constantly responding to manufactured emergencies, you don't have the mental space to recognize the manipulation patterns or develop effective counter-strategies. Jung explained that this keeps you trapped in what he called survival mode, a psychological state where you're focused on immediate threats rather than long-term solutions. Carl Jung provided several key indicators that help identify when a narcissist is deploying their final manipulation tactic. According to Jung's observations, the first sign is a sudden escalation in the intensity and frequency of their attacks. Jung called this manipulation acceleration. But Carl Jung discovered other warning signs that most people miss. Jung found that narcissists begin involving third parties more aggressively, turning your relationships into battlegrounds for their psychological warfare. And Carl Jung observed something about their behavior during this phase that serves as a crucial warning signal. According to Jung's research, narcissists become increasingly desperate and unpredictable as their manipulation tactic reaches its peak intensity. They may make threats, issue ultimatums, or engage in behaviors that seem completely irrational. Jung explained that this desperation reveals the true nature of their psychological state. They're experiencing what he called control panic, the terror of losing power over their target. Carl Jung developed several strategies for protecting yourself when a narcissist deploys their final manipulation tactic. According to Jung's research, the most effective defense is what he called psychological detachment, the ability to observe the manipulation without being emotionally affected by it. But Carl Jung's most powerful defense strategy will surprise you. Jung discovered that the key to defeating narcissistic manipulation is understanding what he called the observer self, the part of your consciousness that can watch your own thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. And Carl Jung said something about developing this observer self that could save your sanity. According to Jung's observations, when you can observe the narcissist's manipulation tactics as psychological phenomena rather than personal attacks, they lose their power to control your emotional state. Jung explained that this detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or unfeeling, it means developing the psychological strength to remain centered in the face of psychological assault. Carl Jung stressed the importance of what he called reality anchoring when dealing with narcissistic manipulation. According to Jung's recommendations, this includes keeping detailed records of events and interactions. But here's why Carl Jung said documentation is crucial for your psychological survival. Jung found that narcissistic manipulation often involves distorting or denying historical facts. Having objective records helps maintain your connection to reality. And Carl Jung discovered something about memory that explains why documentation is so important. According to Jung's research, sustained psychological manipulation can actually affect your memory formation and recall. Jung called this manufactured amnesia. Jung explained that when you're constantly questioned about your perceptions and memories, your brain begins to doubt its own record-keeping abilities. Carl Jung said that recovering from narcissistic manipulation requires what he called shadow integration, acknowledging and accepting the dark experiences you've endured without being defined by them. According to Jung's therapeutic approach, healing involves reclaiming your authentic self, the person you were before the manipulation began. But Carl Jung's most important insight about recovery will give you hope. Jung discovered that surviving narcissistic manipulation often leads to what he called psychological individuation, a deeper understanding of yourself and your own psychological patterns. And Carl Jung said something about this growth that transforms victims into warriors. According to Jung's observations, people who successfully overcome narcissistic manipulation often develop enhanced intuition, stronger boundaries, and superior ability to recognize psychological manipulation in others. Jung explained that this enhanced awareness serves as protection against future manipulation attempts and often leads to a more authentic, fulfilling life. Carl Jung's ultimate insight about narcissistic manipulation was both simple and profound. The narcissist's power comes entirely from your psychological participation in their reality distortion. According to Jung's final analysis, when you stop participating in their psychological games, their manipulation loses all effectiveness. And here's Carl Jung's most liberating discovery about narcissistic manipulation. Jung found that narcissists are actually far more psychologically fragile than they appear. Their elaborate manipulation tactics are desperate attempts to maintain their inflated ego structure. Carl Jung said something about narcissists that will change how you see them forever. They're not powerful predators, they're frightened children in adult bodies, terrified of their own psychological emptiness. According to Jung's research, understanding this truth is the key to psychological freedom. When you see narcissistic manipulation for what it really is, the desperate actions of a psychologically wounded individual, it loses its power to control your emotions and your life. Jung's work reminds us that you have always had the power to reclaim your psychological sovereignty. The narcissist's final manipulation tactic is their last desperate attempt to prevent you from discovering your own strength. But now you know the truth. And according to Carl Jung, the truth is the ultimate weapon against psychological manipulation. Remember what Carl Jung discovered: when a narcissist sees you as too dangerous to manipulate, it means you've already won. Their final dirty trick is proof of your psychological victory, not your defeat. You are stronger than their manipulation. You are wiser than their deception. And you are free to reclaim the authentic life that Jung always believed was your birthright. Thank you so much for staying with me through this exploration. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And if you'd like to go a step further in supporting this work, you can now leave a super thanks below. It's a small way to say thank you, and it truly helps keep this channel going.